Hare Krishna, welcome to our channel. Bhagavad-gita, here it is, because we have it. Bhagavad-gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and my name is Bhagavad-gita. So we have started reading the 13th chapter, Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness, and we get a little bit of a philosophical understanding of this world in a Krishna conscious perspective. Today we will read texts 6 and 7.
Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalang.
So, here we are. Bhagavad-gita will give us all the knowledge we need to be prepared for our spiritual life. If we can just understand Bhagavad-gita, we will still want to read the Srimad Bhagavatam, we will still want to come closer to Krishna. But if we can fully understand the Bhagavad-gita, we will never be confused again in this material world. Or at least we will never have to be confused. Sometimes we're confused because we're very small and, how to say, we're not as rational as we would like to think, because we tend to have this sense of ourselves as we look at things, we think about things, and then we do the smartest rational thing in the perspective. Whereas actually we are more driven by our desires, and our desires, they are more response to the senses of the body we are presently in. Then we are driven by intelligence, and then our intelligence comes in after to kind of justify the desires and the ideas and the choices we have made. But then we come to the point where we are right now, where we are reading Bhagavad-gita, and we want to gain a spiritual perspective in this world, and hopefully in this life as a human being we want to achieve spiritual self-realization. So therefore we're reading the Bhagavad-gita, and in this chapter we will get a lot of knowledge. I will read the Sanskrit. Mahabhutanyahankaro buddhir avyaktamevacha indriyani dashaikangcha panchachendriya gocharaha ichhadvesha sukhang dukkhang sanghatascetanadhritihi etat kshetrang samasena savikharam udahritam. The 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and conviction, all these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. Purport. From all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world can be understood as follows. Yes. So sometimes we we speak about elements, and then we have this sense of the, what are they called? The periodic table, all the atoms that are numbered and put up in a very funny structure with a hole in the middle, and these are the elements. So that's one way of seeing the elements. And then we're looking back at the old times when they considered earth, water, fire and air to be the elements, and we think, that's so primitive. But it's just different ways of sorting things. This is reality, this is what we can observe, this is what we deal with, and then we sort them in a way that makes sense. Like, I think I've said this before, I have a lovely big pantry, is that what it's called in English, where I can put all my foodstuffs. And then I have different shelves. I have one shelf for baking, one shelf for cooking, one shelf for fruits and nuts, one shelf for spices. And of course, those ways of grouping the ingredients are not absolute. I could also group them in different ways. But this works for what I need it for. And so I think with the elements, if we speak of air and water, it's not just that we are being primitive and we can't figure out smaller things. It's just that these groups make sense because it helps us to make sense of reality. Purport. I'm going to read what Prabhupada has to say also. From all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns and the aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra, the components of the word can be understood as follows. First, there are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the 5 great elements, Mahabhuta. And we can understand them. They are different. They have different qualities. We hear that, the air, it includes the sense of touch, because when the air moves we can feel it, but we cannot see it and we cannot taste it. And then fire has form because we can see the shape of fire, but we cannot taste it, right? And water has taste. So anything that has water in it also has taste. And the pure taste of water, we cannot imitate it. We cannot, if our water is bad tasting, maybe if we're lucky it's something a filter can take it out, but we cannot add something else to make it smell like water. It's the quality of water. And earth, it has smell also. Fragrance is there in earth and in things that come from the earth. So these are just ways of understanding reality. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. Then there are 5 senses for acquiring knowledge: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the skin. So with those we sense things. Mainly we sense things that are of the material elements. And then here the Vedic structure says that there are 5 working senses: voice, the legs, the hands, the anus, and the genitals. Those are parts of us that do things. The knowledge acquiring senses, we take in things, and these we put something out in the world. Then above the senses there is the mind, which is within and which can be called the sense within. This is interesting because in Swedish, which is my first language, and I also speak Bhagavad-gita in Swedish, and once I got a comment from someone said, I cannot understand anything here. And yes, because that you were looking at the Swedish version. Then our word for mind is actually the sense within, because we don't have a specific word for mind. We still have the function, we still understand it, but here Prabhupada calls it the sense within. So it is kind of what draws the other senses together. That's the mind. So, therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are 5 objects of the senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. And they are all connected to the elements. Now, the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, representations of the 5 great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms represented by consciousness and convictions are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities. The 5 great elements are a gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represent the primal stage of false ego, technically called the materialistic conception, or tamasa buddhi, intelligence in ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of material nature. The unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhan. So this gets a little more subtle. Maybe it's something we don't always think of it like that. But these elements represent the false ego, and the primal stage of false ego is called materialistic conception, or tamasa buddhi, intelligence in ignorance. So we have some intelligence, but when we are identifying with this material body, then we don't see clearly. We may be very intelligent, but that intelligence kind of stops at the end of our conception of reality. Just like we like to think of the old days, like you go back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years and you read about people in those ages and you feel, they were so ignorant. And then if you wanted to introduce something new, then it would be difficult to accept it, because their frame of reference wouldn't allow them to go outside of that frame of reference. And now we're sitting here feeling very modern, and how could they be like that? But we also have things like that. Sometimes they call it, what is it called? Paradigm? Like you're existing in one way of looking at the world. And then suddenly somebody breaks that box open, and you get a better perspective that includes more of reality. So the complete reality is to understand that we are not of this material world, and that we are not this material body. And as long as we don't understand that, as long as we identify with this material body, we won't be able to see reality as it is. So here we have terms for it. We have terms for everything. Which is actually good, because when you have a discussion, sometimes even you discuss something that, we're not speaking of pradhan and tamasa buddhi, we're speaking about regular English words. But when you start a discussion and you can't really you can't understand the other person's point, and then you have to kind of go back and define your terms. And it turns out you're using the same words, but they don't mean the same thing to both the people. So here we are going to use these terms, and here we spend one whole purport defining the words so we know what we're talking about. So it's a little technical, but it's also very useful. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail along with their interactions should study the philosophy in more details. In Bhagavad-gita, a summary only is given. Yes, so we can get a lot more philosophical. Bhagavad-gita wants to keep things, practical. Arjuna is standing in the middle of a battlefield. He's not just going to sit down and discuss philosophical terms for the sake of it. He just has to understand reality and the meaning of life. Those are big things, but they are also very real things. So that's what Prabhupada says. There are more and deeper philosophy to be had, deeper in the Vedas. Bhagavad-gita, we understand these concepts and we apply them, but basically we're speaking about reality. The body is the representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body, which are 6 in number. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, then it begins to decay, and at the last stage it vanishes. Therefore the field is a non-permanent material thing. However, the kshetragya, the knower of the field, its proprietor, is different. Yes, so when we want to understand that there is a difference between the body and the soul, between me and the material body, then it's also good to understand not only what is the soul, but also what is the body. So here we have it laid out in many interesting Sanskrit terms. But that is just really one thing I appreciate about this philosophy of Krishna consciousness of Bhagavad-gita. It deals with reality. It doesn't deal with how we would want reality to be. Because sometimes you can build a philosophy that is so beautiful, but it is so far removed to reality and you don't know how to get to it. So then what's good is it? Or you can encounter philosophers who speak about reality in such a discouraging way because they don't actually know how to connect to the complete spiritual picture. Like you get this sense of existentialism, which means you look around, the world is full of choices, I can only ever do a few of those things, then I'm going to die, and even the things I try to do, I may not succeed with them, and therefore I might as well sit in my room and be miserable but feel superior because I have kind of seen through the illusion. Yes, you've seen through a certain level of illusion, but you haven't found any truth there. So just seeing the illusion of this world, it is very frustrating, and sometimes it can be, how to say, a very healthy step to kind of jump off into your spiritual realization, because you've taken this rather pessimistic view of existence in the material world, and then you feel motivated to explore if there's anything further to be had. But you don't want to get stuck there and just being negative. It feels, maybe you can feel intellectual and superior, but you're not going anywhere. So here we have our terms, we have our understanding, and next time we will speak further and hear what Krishna has to share with us. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.